We have a few different sources that are reporting on this, so it definitely seems very credible, considering you got Andy Martino, you got John Heyman, and you got The Athletic talking about this as well. But as you can see in the headline, Yankees and the Padres reportedly far apart in Juan Soto trade talks. The Yankees are known to have interest in Padres outfielder Juan Soto, but it doesn't seem as though a trade is coming close to coming to fruition. Per reports from Ken Rosenthal and Dennis Lin, as well as Brandon Cootie of The Athletic, John Heyman of the New York Post, and Andy Martino of SNY, talks have stalled with a noticeable gap between the two clubs. Heyman says that at least 9 clubs have checked in, while the report from The Athletic says the Blue Jays are involved. So could this market actually be bigger than we have actually thought, right? The Yankees, to me, since day one, they have just seemed like the perfect fit for Juan Soto, right? Because when I think of a team for Juan Soto, I'm thinking of a team that could have a legitimate shot at signing him long-term. Obviously, the Yankees got money for days. One of the most storied franchises in all of sports, one of the richest franchises in the world. They can absolutely afford a long-term extension for Juan Soto. That guy just looks perfect in pinstripes when I imagine it in my potato of a brain. Well, sure, there are some other teams out there. I just wonder, when it comes to Juan Soto, when you think of all the great players that have gone through Yankee history, Juan Soto could very well be on his way to being one of the greatest players of all time. He's already putting up amazing numbers at such a young age. He could definitely go down as one of the greats, and I could absolutely see him going down as a Yankee legend. And his bat would just fit perfectly in Yankee Stadium. It just makes so much sense in so many ways. So let's kind of go article through article. Let's break this down here because we got 3 different articles that are talking about this. Let's start with Andy Martino of SNY. He was putting out so many tweets, and I feel like he was trying to put them out so fast, and he was making all these, grammatical errors, which I have too, but it's like, man, Andy, slow down a little bit, my friend. You're going to get the clicks no matter what. But kind of just wrapping it all up here into an easy bundle to read, I just went to the article instead of the tweets. So it says here, momentum between the Yankees and the Padres about a blockbuster Juan Soto trade has stalled, at least for now. That's the key part of this, in my opinion, at least for now, after the sides found themselves far apart on Thursday and Friday. And I'll talk about that real quick. When it comes to trades, there's always leverage going on in trades, right? Teams using the media, right? This is like such a classic example of it, right? And give credit to the Padres. Give credit to the Padres here because they know they are absolutely in a bind here, right? They had to take out a loan not too long ago to be able to, help with their, help pay the payroll, right? So that wasn't good. And we saw reports not too long ago that they're trying to trim payroll, right? So then there's stuff going on with TV money and whatnot. So the Padres, it's very clear that they're trying to shed salary. So give them credit here that they're trying to make this difficult and they're trying to keep holding on to as much leverage as possible. They have to. They absolutely have to, right? They shouldn't be jumping the gun and just, getting rid of Soto immediately. I do think eventually a fair deal will happen, but the Padres have to do this, and they have to really dig their feet in as much as possible because, listen, you're trading away Juan Soto here. Sure, it's only 1 year of Juan Soto, but it's still Juan Soto. I mean, this player is going to make your team so much better at the end of the day. I mean, you got to get as much out of him that you can, right? So moving on with the rest of this article, it says here, according to league sources briefed on talks, San Diego is asking for pitcher Michael King, pitching prospect Drew Thorpe, and as many as 4 or 5 other prospects like Randy Vasquez and Johnny Brito. San Diego is also interested in salary relief. I cannot talk tonight. Not just for Soto, but for center fielder Trent Grisham. That's an interesting twist in this, where it makes sense, right? And Trent Grisham, if you look at the numbers over the last couple of years, the offensive numbers haven't been great, but the defensive numbers are pretty solid. So I could definitely see them being like, hey, you know what? If you want Soto, you got to take Grisham for us too, because Grisham, he's not going to be making an astronomical amount of money next year, but it's still a little something. I believe it's right around $5 or $6 million projected in salary arbitration for next year. So every little bit is going to help the Padres, right? $5-6 million. That could be a depth starter that they could add in free agency. Maybe a couple, one or two relievers possibly. Something. So that could definitely be valuable for that to clear that off of their payroll. He goes on to say here, Jason Dominguez and Anthony Volpe are not involved in these talks, nor are Gleyber Torres, Austin Wells, or Everson Pereira. So I've been mentioning Everson Pereira here for a little while. I'm thinking, hey, you know what? This would be a really nice piece to send back to the Padres. But with Everson Pereira, I'll get to the values in just a little bit on baseballtradevalues.com. But Pereira does have a pretty solid value, right? Because he's one of their top prospects. There's a lot of promise with him. So I'm not surprised that he's not really being involved in these talks, but it also kind of goes hand in hand that the Padres, they want pitching, right? So I figured, yeah, the packages that I've come up with in my potato of a brain, where I'm thinking, okay, yes, definitely include some pitching, but maybe include a position player, a young position player in there as well. But hey, no surprise to me that he's not coming up in these talks. And again, I'll get to Michael King in just a little bit. Let's move over to the New York Post. Let's go to John Heyman. He says here, the Yankees and the Padres have exchanged names in trade talks for San Diego superstar hitter Juan Soto, but neither side is said to have liked what they heard so far. At least in the early stages, it's fair to say an enormous gap exists. And let's be real here. We've seen this type of language in these articles so many times. Oh, teams are so far apart, right? Where, sure, maybe something doesn't end up happening, but I feel like usually stuff ends up happening, even though, we see that there's an enormous gap, right? Goes on to say here, the difference in offers is so great. In fact, the Yankees may turn some of their attention elsewhere, at least for a little while. This is very interesting that he keeps saying that they're far apart, but he says here, at least in the early stages, and then he says, at least for a little while, that they'll maybe go their separate ways. So it's just funny how they kind of keep still keeping it together a bit, right? However, the fit is so obvious that no one would be surprised if talks are resurrected. Soto, generally regarded as one of baseball's top 5 or 6 hitters, could be just the piece to revive a Yankees offense that bordered on moribund. Man, what a word. The Yankees see the current player cost as way too high based on the Padres' latest ask, which was said to be very pitching heavy. So moving on to the Athletic here, and they actually bring up an interesting one here. We just looked at this on the MLB Trade Rumors report. In Juan Soto trade talks, the Yankees and Padres far apart, but the Blue Jays are suitors, right? So this was by Ken Rosenthal, Dennis Lin, and Brandon Cootie. As of Friday afternoon, the Yankees and the Padres were far apart on a deal involving Juan Soto. The negotiations are not taking place in a vacuum. The Yankees face competition for the left-handed slugger. Now, I'm curious to see how much competition is that actually. Is that a lot of competition? Or is it really maybe a few other teams possibly? I'm curious about that. But goes on to say the Blue Jays, they're coming up here. But getting back to what the Padres are seeking a big multiplayer return for Soto, including Major League ready or near Major League ready pitching, according to an official with one of the clubs interested. It is also possible the Padres will accept lower level prospects if they believe those pitchers are sufficiently talented. Goes on to say, the Padres have lost pitching like Nick Martinez, Blake Snell's a free agent, Waka Lugo Hader as well. From the Yankees, the Padres targets include Clark Schmidt, Michael King, and then it goes on to mention some players with the Blue Jays, where if they were to go that route, where they, Ricky Tiedemann, Bowden Francis, Alek Manoah could come up. I'll get to a Blue Jays package in just a little bit. And then they also mention that Trent Grisham has come up here. So all three articles are pretty similar here when it comes to that they're far apart, what players are coming up, what each team is looking for. So kind of getting to this, let's really break this down. So I'm going to get to the Yankees package here in just a second, but I want to go over Juan Soto and Trent Grisham real quick. So Juan Soto, as you can see, he's going to be making $33 million projected for next year for his last year of arbitration. Trent Grisham, 4.9 is the projected salary for next year. So that's a combined just a little under $40 million right there. So it's going to be a lot of payroll relief for the Padres. And as of right now, they are projected, even with Soto and Grisham, to have 189. But you got to think here, the Padres, they need to add a lot of pieces. They need to add a lot of pitching, right? So even if they clear these two guys off of their roster, that would bring their projected payroll down to 149, and then they want to keep it to around, according to reports, around 200 million. So that would give them, right, around 50 million in spending money to go out there and go get some more pitching for the roster and go patch up other spots of the team. So right now, you're only working with $11 million to try and put your team together for next year, and that is not going to work. So this is why they're just trying to get rid of every bit of salary as they can, and Juan Soto's obviously the big chunk. So let's get to the Yankee package here. So I'm seeing a lot of people going back and forth in Twitter right now. So looking at the package, right, and this does not include the package where that was reported by Martino, where there would be an extra one or two prospects included. I just put the names that have come up, right? 1 to 2 extra prospects, that could be anyone. So I'm just going to keep it simple, keep the 4 names. But right here, you can see that, yeah, this is pretty far apart, right? This is definitely far apart. You're looking at right around $20 million apart, and that's a pretty decent gap, right? Now, baseball trade values is not the end-all, be-all. Just going to put that. You all know I love my baseball trade values. It's not perfect by any means. It's never going to be perfect by any means, but it's a good tool that is going to find at least some kind of a middle ground when it comes to finding as close to as possible fair trades, right? Actually, funny enough, this would actually be approved by the simulator as a major overpay. That is a huge overpay right now. So the simulator would actually approve this. Now, again, the reports are suggesting that both sides are not fond of the packages going back and forth. Now, let's talk about Michael King. Michael King is a big name that's coming up right now, and people are really debating. I'm seeing all over the place. People are coming after me saying, Juan Soto for Michael King? Are you kidding me? Baseball trade values is terrible because it says Michael King has a higher value than Juan Soto. I mean, this is where we need to stop, think about it, right? Michael King is clearly not going to be more valuable to your team than Juan Soto. I think we can all agree on that, right? Let's start off right there, okay? However, when it comes to a more economics point of view, Michael King, this value, in my opinion, definitely checks out, right? And remember, there's also a range too. Let's keep that in mind, right? It could go as low to around maybe 25, 26 million, or it could go as high to 40. There's a lot of aspects that come into play when determining a player's value. But again, really keep in mind there is a range here. Just because it has one solid number, that's just the middle point, right? So remember, there's always a range, right? So if you were to go around 26, 30 million, I think that's a pretty fair value for Michael King. And here's why with Michael King. So let's go take a look here. First off, at what he's going to be making for next year. When it comes to his projected salary for next year, $2.6 million. That's incredibly cheap, right? Teams always want to keep the payroll as little as possible. Even if you are Steve Cohen, spending the big money. Hey, sometimes, having, smaller salaries like this, that's a good thing, right? But when you're looking at the value, again, there's a difference between value and player. Player is different from value when it comes to the economics, right? Michael King, if we're looking at him, let's look at the numbers first and foremost, right? That's going to be the big driving factor when it comes to a player's value, okay? Michael King, ERA of 2.75, FIP of a 3.13, just around 11 strikeouts per 9 last year, under 3 walks per 9 last year, under a home run per 9 last year. Those are really good numbers, and he did really well in the rotation last year down the stretch. So already, based off of the numbers last year, he already has a good starting point when it comes to his value. But then you could look at the last couple of years, right? He had some pretty solid numbers even going back to 2021. The FIP was a 3.86. ERA was a 3.55. 2022, he was amazing then, right? And then last year, I mean, this guy came in some big spots last year, ice in his veins, and was so good out of that bullpen. And then he went into the rotation, and the guy was just dominating in the rotation. So when you look at the numbers, they're really solid. But again, we're looking at the entire package. We're not just looking at the player's performance. You have to look at salary, which we just looked at $2.9 million. When you're putting up numbers like that, combined with a very cheap salary, that's already a good thing. Then you look at the years of control. He's got 2 more years of control. Not a free agent until 2026. So he's under control for 2024 and 2025. So combine good numbers, combine a cheap salary, combine 2 seasons of guaranteed Michael King. That's going to create a high value for you, right? It's not Juan Soto, in my opinion. This is probably going to sound weird to some people. I don't look at it as Juan Soto for Michael King. I look at it as a superstar player like Juan Soto who is only under control for 1 season, and he's going to cost you $33 million. However, that surplus of $23.8 million, that really just shows how good Juan Soto is, because he's going to be making $33 million, but it's still spitting out a pretty high surplus, which is only for 1 year. That's a really good value for a guy that's going to be making $33 million in 1 year. All right. So I'm not looking at it as Juan Soto for Michael King. I'm looking at it as 1 year of a superstar player for a couple of years of a pretty solid pitcher who's making very little money, right? It's like, I guess the analogy I could use, you go out, you see a PS5 on the shelf and you see it for like $50 and you're like, huh? A PS5 for $50? Are you pulling my chain here? What are you saying? No, that's $50. Wow, that's a really good value. I only got $30 on me, but I'm going to go find $20 somewhere, because that is an incredible value right there, right? That's basically what I'm talking about, right? I'm not looking so much at the players. Of course I'm looking at the players, but I'm looking at the entire package, right, of what they're bringing to the table, not just performance-wise, but salary-wise, contract-wise, years of control, right? And also, one more thing to mention that I know I'm leaving out right now. Michael King, right? Again, showing that he can be a starter. There's not a lot of starting pitching out there, right? You also have to look at the market in itself. The market is very thin on cost-controlled starting pitching that is cheap, right? There is not a very high supply of it. So when you don't have a high supply, there's going to be more of a demand, which is going to just make the cost go up, right? I'll use the PS5 analogy again. Remember when PS5s, there was like a shortage of them and people were selling them for like $900? Well, that was because there was like no PS5s out there, right? Nowadays, I don't know how many PS5s are out there. I'm guessing they're probably doing fine now when it comes to the supply. But do you all remember that? People were selling PS5s. They were buying them, right? Getting their hands on them any way they could, and then going on eBay and selling them for like $1,200. That's the point, right? So again, the market is also determining Michael King's value here. So don't look at it simply as Juan Soto for Michael King. Look at it as the whole picture, right? So Albert Galvin, how you doing? $4.99. Am I crazy to think the Sox can come in with an offer of either Cutter or Houck and then Verdugo and other prospects and beat their offer? I mean, it really comes down to, again, remember, baseball trade values, I think, is a really good tool, but all teams are going to value their players differently. There's never going to be a perfect solution. There's always going to be differing opinions. That's what makes it great, right? Because there's never going to be an exact correct answer, right? You got 30 teams out here, 30 organizations that do things very differently, that value players very differently. So if the Red Sox, let's say they came and presented that, right? And if the Padres like it, and if the Red Sox are willing to give something up like that, yeah, sure. But again, it depends on, do the teams want to do it, right? So, yeah, number-wise, yeah, you could definitely get a deal done. Tanner Howe, Cutter Crawford, a couple of younger pitchers, right? I think you can make an argument that they're, I don't know, I'd say Michael King, as of right now, is better than those two, right? But, you know, it's still young, cost-controlled starting pitching at the end of the day. So, yeah, I mean, and then throw in Verdugo as well, who's going to be a lot cheaper than Soto. I definitely think the Red Sox could get it done. But again, it's going to come down to, do the Padres like that? Do the Red Sox do the Red Sox think it's worth it, right? So, yeah, on paper, sure, I think that can get done. But philosophically, between those two teams, I'm not quite sure. So, Albert Galvin, thank you so much. But again, I'm just going to reiterate one more time before I do move on to the other parts of this trade. Don't look at it as Juan Soto for Michael King. Don't look at this. Don't think this is telling you that Michael King is better than Juan Soto. That's not what this is saying. This is simply saying that there's a lot more in play when it comes to the total value of Michael King, which is his performance, his salary, years of control, the market, right? The demand, the supply for, again, there's little supply of cost-controlled, cheap starting pitching. There's a high demand for it. So that is why you're going to see a much higher value for Michael King than Juan Soto, who is under control for only 1 year and making $33 million. So let's talk about the other pieces here. Drew Thorpe, and these are just the names that are being listed in these articles, right? Drew Thorpe, he's listed at $11 million for his median value. Randy Vasquez, Johnny Brito. So again, the simulator actually approves this, right? So that is one thing to keep in mind. When it comes to Juan Soto, right? I mean, yes, there is going to be wiggle room here because, sure, I'm presenting to you that Juan Soto, yeah, he's got 1 year left, $33 million, yada, yada, but it's still Juan Soto at the end of the day. There is a perception thing that does come into play here, right? So, yeah, you could see something like this happen, right? Now, when it comes to the Yankees and the Padres, they're not agreeing, right? And according to the reports, the Yankees think it's too much, and the simulator agrees. It says major overpay, right? So what could be a trade that actually works? Well, there's a bunch of different ways you could go here. Let's say you take out Drew Thorpe, right? I think you could probably maybe start there, right? Hey, you know what? We're feeling maybe okay, but you got to take out Thorpe. All right, Michael King, Vasquez, Brito, maybe throw in like one lower level prospect. I don't know. Throw in someone like a Trey Sweeney, right? Or maybe you can even go lower than him. You got a bunch of guys that are listed here. Maybe like Clayton Beater. Maybe you could throw someone in, like that, right? Who's got a pretty low value. But instead, right? Maybe they want Drew Thorpe, right? Maybe they want him to be in that deal. So let's throw Drew Thorpe back in, right? And then maybe instead of a Michael King, you can do Clark Schmidt, right? So that right there, that makes it a little bit more digestible, right? So I think at the end of the day, the Yankees are simply saying, no, you're not getting Michael King, Drew Thorpe, Vasquez, Brito. That's too much, right? Michael King, we'll take him out, right? And we'll put Clark Schmidt in there for you, but we can't do all of that, which I think that's very fair for the Yankees to think about that. I think that's very fair for them to have that perspective, right? But I also understand the Padres' perspective because they know they're in a hole, right? And they're just trying to dig their feet in as much as they can and not budge. They know they have the Padres, sure, they are lacking leverage in terms of, that, they have to clear payroll space. Everyone knows that. But they also have leverage in the fact that this is Juan Soto. This is one of the best players in the game. So there is that to think about too. So, again, and the one advantage of Clark Schmidt, where if you were to put him in instead, Clark Schmidt has a lot more control. He's actually going to be making according to the projections for arbitration, going to be making the same salary, but you're going to have Clark Schmidt for 2 more seasons. So that in itself, the problem with Clark Schmidt, he just hasn't put up as good of numbers as Michael King, right? So that's the big difference between the two, and that's why you're going to see a much lower value for Clark Schmidt. So I think something like this works. Again, I think it's the Padres. Here's what the Padres are trying to do. They are trying to have their cake and eat it too, right? You can't do that here, right? They know what kind of a bind they're in, but they're trying to eat as much cake as they can, right? Which I don't blame them for that. So, let's say these talks completely fall through. These guys, they can't do it. They're done. It's over. Padres turn their attention elsewhere. And then the other team that came up were the Blue Jays, right? According to The Athletic, from the article with Ken Rosenthal, Dennis Lin, and Brandon Cootie. Could the Blue Jays actually emerge here, right? The Blue Jays, according to the reports, have been listed as a finalist for Shohei Ohtani, according to the reports. Personally, I think Ohtani, I don't know. This is just me. I think he's going Dodgers or he's just going back to the Angels. That's just my own personal opinion. Maybe the Cubs. I could maybe see that. I don't know. This is something about, to me, I do think there's a chance he can go to Toronto. Maybe I'm just not wrapping my head around it. I don't know. But I think that would be crazy if he went to the Blue Jays. I mean that in a good way, right? That would just be like, whoa, Ohtani, a Blue Jay. What in the world? I don't know. I just feel like personally the Dodgers, Angels probably got a better shot. And then the Cubs too. Cubs got a really good farm. Blue Jays, on the other hand, their farmers ran a little thin the last couple of years. Anyway, I could get into a whole thing on that. Let's stick on Soto here. But let's talk about a package with the Blue Jays, right? Let's say you did Alek Manoah, Bowden Francis, those 2 guys right there. I mean, that's already still giving you a lot of wiggle room, right? And if we look at Bowden Francis, where is he? Bowden Francis. I don't know where he is, but his name has come up. So with him, though, there's not a lot there when it comes to the value. And actually, let me go here. Let me pull up the Blue Jays payroll. So the Blue Jays, they're already at a projected 203 for next year. So they don't care about adding Soto. They're trying to make some kind of a splash here. So when it comes to Francis, I'm not seeing a projected salary for him next year. I don't know why he's not coming up on here unless they just haven't updated it. Let me pull up his numbers. Bowden Francis. Let's take a look. Well, Bowden Francis, first thing that jumps right off the page, dude is 6'5", weighs 220, right? And had a pretty good season last year, right? I'm guessing, I don't know why he's like not listed as a, well, I guess he's already been in the majors for a little bit now, so they probably took him off. So, but with Bowden Francis last year, he put up some really good numbers. I mean, look at these numbers right here. 36 and a third innings pitched last year over 20 games, a 1.73 ERA, FIP at a 3.86. Strikeouts right around 8.5 in his first full season. Just under 2 walks per 9. Home runs, not incredibly high. They're fine, 1.2 per 9. But there's a lot to like there. He's not going to have big velocity. He averaged right around 94 miles an hour last year. Guy's got a really good slider, though. Has good command. So, yeah, there's something to like there. But the one thing with him, he's almost 28 years old, but he has a lot of control. So that is one thing I could see the Padres valuing. But the good thing with him is that he's not going to have an incredibly high value. So as you can see with, the age already, he's an older minor league player that basically just came up, right? So that right there is going to hold his value back a little bit. So I think once he gets more of a track record, right, I definitely think that value will shoot way up. So Alek Manoah could be an interesting piece, right? This guy just a couple of years ago put up some really good numbers. However, we all saw the complete the complete 180 from Alek Manoah. My goodness, like the guy just fell off a cliff. I mean, my goodness. But Alek Manoah, he has shown what he can do. I think he can definitely turn it around. Now, another player that was listed in that article was Ricky Tiedemann. This would be really tough for the Blue Jays to part with. Not only their top pitching prospect, but their top their top prospect overall. That would be a tough one to give up for 1 year of Soto. I mean, goodness gracious. He had a pretty solid season last year. He was kind of all over the place. Rookie ball, A ball, double A, but mostly in double A. He was going through some injuries last year. But if you're looking at the strikeout numbers with him, 82 strikeouts overall in the minor leagues last year over 44 innings. That is ridiculous, right? So, obviously, Ricky Tiedemann, this guy's going to be good. He's only 21 years old. Obviously, there's a high value there. So, I wonder if the Blue Jays would be okay with parting with him. Blue Jays fans, let me know. Would you trade Ricky Tiedemann for Juan Soto? Let me know. I think that's really interesting. Really interesting, right? But in terms of realism, at least with me, at least in my opinion, I would think probably looking more along the lines of guys like, Manoah, Francis, like someone along those lines, right? Maybe you could throw in a couple of other prospects here, Brandon Barrera, who right now is their number 4, a very young guy. He had some decent numbers last year in 7 starts, nothing crazy. But that's a young guy that perhaps you could throw in. Padres are looking for pitching, right? So maybe that could be someone. Maybe you could throw in some major league ready pieces. I think the Blue Jays, could get something done. It's going to, again, come down to, do the Blue Jays want to part with someone like a Ricky Tiedemann, their top prospect, not just their top pitching prospect, but their top prospect overall? Is that something that they would even like to do? My guess would be no. I would, my goodness, if I had a top guy like that in my farm, and even though, yeah, sure, Juan Soto's on the table here, I would have a really tough time. I could definitely see giving him up if you had 2 years of Juan Soto. I could see that, but 1, and there's no guarantee that you could re-sign him, that's tough. Alek Manoah, on the other hand, sure, this was a guy who was really good a couple of years ago, but perhaps a change of scenery, could be good for him. Who knows what the relationship is like between the two sides, what it's really like. I know we get reports and whatnot all the time, but who knows what it's really like behind the scenes. So, I think the Blue Jays could get something done. Sure. I definitely think that's possible. What do we got here? John? Nope. Okay, I thought I had a notification. My goodness. Could you imagine if something happened right now? Hey, buckle your seatbelts. You never know. Look out for the Blue Jays, right? The Blue Jays are motivated. They're trying to get something done. Personally, I do think the Yankees and the Padres end up working something out, right? Going back to the trade that I had listed here, at least just the names that have come up, right? If you did this would be considered a minor overpay. I think Brian Cashman would do something like this. I definitely think he would do something along these lines. I personally think the sticking point is obviously the different packages, right? He probably doesn't want to do Michael King and all these guys. He would probably do Clark Schmidt and all these guys, right? That's what I think. I think that would be a much more digestible package for him. Ben Lowry, $5 super chat. And Ben Lowry, thank you for becoming a member for the 16th straight month. You are amazing. You're sitting here still waiting on the O's to get Soto. I don't think the Orioles are getting Juan Soto, my friend, but could you imagine? Super chat as well. Thank you, Ben. Sorry I'm late. Still waiting on Soto to the O's and the Sox to get Yamamoto and Montgomery. I'm telling you, I feel good about Yamamoto, man. I feel good. We had another report earlier this morning saying the Red Sox are right there at the top among the top suitors with a few other teams. So that makes me feel pretty good. Honestly, I think Montgomery, the fact that that was like their first target they went after this offseason, right? When we first went into the offseason, we saw that report that the Red Sox were interested in Montgomery. They made it known right off the bat, hey, we want you, right? And he's going to be staying in Boston for the offseason. It just feels like it could actually happen, right? I definitely think it could happen. Thank you, Ben, for the super chat. Brandon Lee, $2 super chat. I would only do Tiedemann if Ohtani signs with Toronto. Good grief, man. Could you imagine Ohtani and Soto in that lineup? Oh, stop it. I don't want to think about that. That makes my tummy hurt. Oh, I don't want that. I see what you're saying though, right? Because if you get Ohtani and then you still have a chance at Soto, I mean, that's going to be a lot of freaking payroll, right? I mean, if you're going to be paying Ohtani whatever it ends up being, $50 million per year, who knows what the AAV actually ends up being, him, and then you're paying Soto $33 million. I mean, you're adding at least $80 million of salary, so that you're pushing your salary at that point almost to the $300 million mark, where we did see the Mets go over that last year. But still, that's high. But the Blue Jays are motivated. Ben Lowry, $5 super chat. What are your thoughts on Ohtani about he wants the teams to keep quiet on negotiations, that they're serious, and the Giants are awfully quiet? Listen, I had a video not too long ago, free agents that teams should sign, and Ohtani was my pick for the Giants. I think they absolutely should sign him. However, with the Giants, the one thing I will say is when they have gone after these top targets on the market, they have swung and missed so much. And, maybe when I put out a tweet not too long ago saying, man, the Giants, they got to stop going for these top guys. I think I could have worded that a little bit better, but I basically just said it so many times they have just missed out on the free agent market because they just go after these top guys. And it seems like they go after them, and then by the time they've already swung and missed, there's not really a whole lot else out there, right? They were kind of really pushing for some guys last year, like Judge, Correa, remember? And then it just never works out. So, yeah, I think they should go after him. But I also think that basically what I was trying to say is they shouldn't put all their eggs in one basket for Ohtani, right? Definitely, in my opinion, they just shouldn't do that. I think, honestly, yes, keep the tabs on Ohtani. Yes. But keep Bellinger right there. Keep Chapman right there. Don't forget about those guys, right? Keep your eyes on them. Keep your eyes on other targets on the market too. Don't put all the focus on Ohtani. It seemed like that's what was going on with Judge last year. Seemed like that was their number one target last year. And then at the last second, he was back to the Yankees, right? So as for him wanting to, teams to keep quiet, I've actually been wanting to talk about this because I find some of the comments being thrown out there a little silly, in my opinion, because I'm seeing a lot of people saying Ohtani hasn't talked for so long now, and he hasn't made any comments to the media or anything. And I've even seen Harold Reynolds talking about it, saying he should be talking to the media and blah, blah, blah. Listen, if the man doesn't want to talk to the media, or if he doesn't want anyone mentioning it, that's his right. If he wants that, then that's what he wants, right? There are comments that Harold Reynolds made, saying he should be talking to the media, about stuff. But it's Ohtani, he personally just wants to keep things quiet. He wants to keep things close to the vest. And I think if that's what he wants, I think people should respect that personally, right? That's just my opinion. I don't think he already knows. Here's the thing with Ohtani, man. This is what I personally believe. This is just my own thoughts, my opinions. I think he knows it's going to be a circus when he signs. I don't think he wants it to be this over-the-top market kind of a thing. I actually think Ohtani, I think he's looking at the market in itself. I almost think Ohtani, in my personal opinion, the way he comes off to me, I almost think he feels like he doesn't even like all this attention, right? He just wants to sign a fair deal based on what his talents have been, right? And what his talents will be moving forward. I think he just wants to get paid fairly, which, yeah, he should get paid a ton of money because that's what he's worth, right? I don't think he wants to make it more than that, right? Because he already knows it's going to be ridiculous after he signs somewhere. I think he just doesn't want to make this a whole circus kind of a show. I don't think he wants to make this like the LeBron thing back in the day, right? Even the Trevor Bauer thing a couple of years ago. I did find the Bauer sweepstakes kind of fun a couple of years ago. I did like that he was being, interactive with it, with the fans. I did like kind of how he was doing it, but I'm not saying, that's the only way to do it. If Ohtani wants to keep it quiet and he wants to go, lay low, and I'm sure he's doing it out of respect for, all the other guys out there. I don't think he wants to make it all about him, right? Unfortunately, it is all about him, and he knows that, but I don't think he wants to make it more than that. That's just my opinion. So when I'm seeing these guys in the media saying, Ohtani should talk to the media, that's not fair, he doesn't talk to us. Oh, boo-hoo, Harold Reynolds. Like, what? Good grief. Go eat a sandwich. If he doesn't want to talk about it, he doesn't want to talk about it. Anyway, but Juan Soto, Yankees, I think it happens eventually. It's just going to be a matter of just getting through negotiations, getting through the haggling. This is what it is. This is haggling, everyone. I'm seeing these reports. It's like, are we really surprised the Padres are just trying to get as much out of a package from a team for Juan Soto? Don't blame them for that. Why, And yeah, people are going to say, oh, Michael King's the sticking point. There's a lot more to Michael King than just the player. There's so much more that goes into it. And we need to start thinking that way. That this is my goal. This is my mission. I want people out there to stop just thinking in terms of MLB The Show. Start thinking in terms of the whole package, salary, years of control, all of that. Right? The market in itself, the demand for starting pitching, the supply of starting pitching, right? There's so much more that goes into valuing a player. Yes, Juan Soto is much, much, much more valuable as a player than Michael King. But Michael King, for 2 years, for a very cheap salary, that is also very valuable too. So, anyway, everyone, I think that's all I got for tonight. I kind of just wanted to hop on here. I saw a lot of people talking, saw a lot of people going back and forth on Twitter land about all this, and I figured instead of just trying to tweet stuff, I'd just come live here and just give you my thoughts and kind of break this down for all of you. We got the winter meetings, man. We got the winter meetings next week, and on Sunday night, I definitely will be live Sunday night because that will be the night before the winter meetings. Oh, are you all feeling it, man? You all feeling it? Winter meeting time. This is, one of my favorite times of the year. Favorite times of the year. Everyone, have yourself a great night. Have a great weekend coming up. Seriously, get out there. Get outside. Put down the video game controller. Stop playing MLB The Show. Play MVP baseball. And maybe get outside a little bit too. Have a good weekend, everyone. And I'll talk to you next time.